this is what I'm talking about. That Tupac and Who Shot Tupac and Biggie shit on Fox was trash. That is right. And another interesting thing too is Russell Poole's son, Kurt Poole, who I've talked to a few times. He was very outspoken last night, and this is the Russell Poole who led the Biggie case and who broke the Rampart scandal. His son was on here tearing into them because even though they did represent Russell Poole, they still got it wrong when it come to who actually pulled the trigger. But if RJ is waiting, I'm not going to keep you guys on the Twitter feed. But I did want to show you a couple comments. Here it is. Now this is Kurt Poole. This is Russell Poole's son. It seems Kading has distanced himself from Reggie since then, and also seems he's distanced himself from murder rap. Yeah, and that's the best point of it all. You see Greg lawyer up. I mean, it's ridiculous. And he's right. Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd also worked for Greg Kading. Anyway, I guess we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road real quick.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
Classic example. We ended up getting a lot of press about how Malcolm Greenidge said he could identify the shooter.
And then the chicks made this right here on Coble.
Bullshit!
And man, it seemed like almost immediately after they made that right, a white Cadillac pulled up on the side of us. I distinctly remember looking at the Cadillac when it pulled up.
Bullshit!
At this particular time, a black arm came out of the window and he had a gun in his hand.
Bullshit!
We finally track him down to set up a re-interview, and he says, I'm not going to look at any photos because I can't identify him. Yeah, we got beat up in the LA Times over that.
Yeah, that's right, I remember
You
that.
know? And I'm thinking, okay, put up or shut up, Ace. And, well, but again, Reggie Wright Jr. is the one that brought him to that interview.
There you are. Yeah.
What up, homies?
I'm just checking audio levels. If you could talk for me, please.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Mama wears army boots. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I sound like the Sprint guy or the Verizon guy.
So
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. So I just showed him the EDI mean clip. You want to tell everybody kind of what they're looking at? You put that together.
The EDI don't mean clip. Okay. EDI don't mean what I say. EDI don't mean what I'm talking about. He's a fucking liar. You know, one way or another, he's bending the truth. You know, oh, I shot him. Well, I didn't see nothing. Oh, I can identify him. No, I can't. You know, pick a day of the week. Pick his story. I mean, you know, Edie, you know, clearly does things for the money. Frank and I tried to interview him after we interviewed Napoleon for the second assassination movie. We tried to get him for an interview, and you know, this is a guy that Frank was every bit as instrumental in saving them as he was everything else, because he saved them in that trailer when they was in there with Snoop in New York. He saved their lives. And Edie, I mean, wouldn't give Frank Alexander an interview for his documentary unless Frank Alexander paid him $5,000 cash. And he goes, well, I'll be generous because you're a friend. I'll do it for $2,500 up front and maybe $2,500 and you make some money. So now we're talking about, you know, this is a guy who Frank Alexander literally saved his fucking life in that trailer when they shot up that trailer in New York, and he got them all out of there. Outlaws got out of there. They got out of there unharmed. And Frank got them and chased them down. You know, this is the lack of respect, okay? This is it. So that showed me what this guy was all about when he was on there. So that's the first thing. The second thing about it is that he goes on, EDI don't mean, says that Pac was laying on the ground when the when they got there with the car, and that isn't true because Frank Alexander made it clear and said to the police that they had trouble opening up the door. I think even Chris Carroll, the bike cop, said that they had trouble opening up the passenger door, and they had to get Suge out. Suge had to run around to the passenger side because he's the only one who knew how to open up that door. I think there was a special
and
lock.
you can also tell in the statements, because when he's talking to the police, they're affirming what he's saying, like they know what he's referring to.
Right. So, Frank went and they had to get Tupac out of the car. I think Death Row Dave said that Suge had special solenoid locks on there, that it was with a particular key fob or a particular way that it had to be unlocked so that people couldn't get into it, like DEA agents and people like that. It was a special deal, and Suge was the only one who knew how to get at it. And Frank Alexander said that so many times, but now that Frank's dead, E.D.I. don't mean just figures he can say whatever he wants to say, whether he means it or not. So that's what I have to say about that.
And it's funny because even the other side of the fence, I just put up a piece I did with L.T. Hutton, who works with the Dog Pound. And even he said, I wish Frank Alexander was alive today because he could tell you that this happened, this didn't happen, this happened. So even people at death row knew that Frank Alexander knew what he was talking about. What I think is funny about the
wait a minute. You know what? Before you get onto that thought, an interesting thought. You mean L.T. Hutton actually said he wished Frank Alexander was alive? Because I'm going to tell you, Frank Alexander knocked on L.T. Hutton's door for 5 years prior to that movie, but actually 5 years prior to his death, when they were doing the documentary, and he was knocking on their doors trying to get a leg into the movie to be a part of it, and they kept kicking him to the curb and sending him away. So I think it's really fucking ironic that he's saying he wished Frank Alexander was alive. I bet he does now, but when Alexander was actually at their doors, and I got the emails to prove it, when Frank Alexander was at their doors knocking and asking to be a part of the biopic, they kept kicking his ass to the curb. So it's interesting to hear L.T. Hutton say that now. Of course, a lot of people say things after people are dead. So anyway, please continue. I just thought that was interesting.
Little vitriol. Okay, well, what I was referring to was the clip that everybody saw of Idi Amin, and what I think, or EDI don't mean, and what I think that I want everybody to be real crystal clear on is on the Fox special, Edie's telling them not only did he see the car pull up, but did he seen the arm come out. And in the statements that he made to Las Vegas Metro Police the night of the shooting, he said he did not see the car until he heard the shooting. He heard the shooting.
Yeah, and he only saw it leave.
And he only saw it leave. That means he didn't see a car in front of it. He had the placement of the girl's car wrong. Fox had the placement of the girl's car wrong. The Cadillac did not follow the girls. The girls did not turn off and then the Cadillac pulled up and shot Tupac. The girls were on the left-hand side of Tupac. So it's very easy. I don't know if these people don't realize that their statements are out there, publicly available, but everything he said in the Fox documentary flew in the face of the statement that he made the night of the shooting.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to the piece de la resistance, and that is the Reggie Wright interview. And I've been asked what I think now that I actually watched the interview, after I stopped laughing, I had to watch it again. What I thought of the Fox interview. Jesse, you can tell that Reggie's made a deal in his current case, because when he was asked about the case, he basically on national television confessed to being guilty of it because he said, I screwed up. Now, if somebody asks you, you commit a crime, you say, I screwed up. You know what? You're admitting you did it. And if he's not afraid to go on national television and admit that he did something like that, there must be a deal in the works, because why in the hell would you be stupid enough to do that?
Well, the writing was on the wall when he didn't have to. Has he even had his arraignment yet?
No, he doesn't have his arraignment until November.
And they've already dropped seizure on his house. They're not even going to take his house. So, I mean, the writing's been on the wall for a long time. And I find it quite odd in the Fox special that Reggie Wright didn't know who David Mack was, and Suge didn't know who David Mack was, and they were both doing the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz, saying he went that away.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. So we have that part of it. I mean, I think that the thing that bothered me the most about the entire show. Hold on a second here. I'm gonna trying to get my my screen figured out here so I can read the comments without having to keep looking off camera whenever I do. Maybe I'm not going to be able to, but we'll see. Ultimately, the thing that bugged me the most, Jess, is that Reggie Wright Jr. was the head of security for Death Row Records for the entire time. Reggie Wright Jr. has had 20 years to think about the Biggie killing. According to Greg Kading, he's been in front of the police a dozen times. He's been interviewed a dozen times, according to Greg Kading, and I've seen absolutely no proof of this. But Reggie's been given multiple lie detector tests, you know, which is all bullshit again. But Reggie, you know, has been given lie detector. He's been very helpful to the cops. You've had 20 years to think about this. So when somebody asks you, who do you think killed Biggie, and you just dumb up, like you don't have a clue. You had 20 years to think about this. The Fox people gave him all the rope he needed, and they did not press him one bit about it. She tried to a little bit on it, where she tried to press him regarding the being the head of Death Row Security. But honestly, they treated him so well in terms of they really could have gone for the jugular when he was playing dumb, because who's going to believe for a minute that a guy who was the head of security for Death Row Records and #1 to Suge Knight and implicate Suge Knight in a killing and not implicate himself in it? Please. You know, that's the thing.
Reggie Wright Jr. handled all the money for Suge, and he visited him over 200 times during the period he was in prison and during the period in which the Notorious B.I.G. was murdered. So I don't know how Reggie can point the finger at, by basically referring to Murder Rap, point the finger at Suge with clearing himself. That was the biggest problem I had with Murder Rap to begin with, and hopefully the public now gets to see it for what it is. It's a big contradiction. It's a walking contradiction. And the biggest question that everybody had was, well, why didn't they use the Puffy angle? Why didn't they go to Puffy route? Do you have any thoughts on that, RJ?
Why that Fox didn't go the Puffy route?
Yeah, you don't have to be facetious. Yeah, that they didn't go with the Murder Rap narrative that Puffy paid $1 million.
Well, I think that they would have gone with any narrative at all. I was told by a very reliable source, that the producer of the Fox show actually called them and was panicking 2 weeks before the show aired and said, we don't have a third act. We don't have a resolution to this. We don't have it. And ultimately, the big thing is that
they had 2
they may have
weeks
gone
to
with
go
Greg
at that
Kading's
point, right?
Right. Yeah. And now, they could have very easily gone with Kading's theory, but the problem is Kading didn't show up. So why are you going to go with the theory that, you know, that Kading put out there and Reggie's trying to endorse? But, you know, Kading did what Kading does. I said this last week that, you know, Kading didn't show up. He was subpoenaed to appear at a court hearing for Frank and I, where he was supposed to talk and promised Frank that he would talk about Reggie Wright in this hearing. And then he didn't show for that either. So he, you know, standing people up is something that he's no stranger to doing. You know, that's in his character. You know, hollow promises, empty promises, not showing up when you need to show up. You know, that's just who he is. But I think that the reason that they didn't go with the Murder Rap theory is because it's bullshit. Period. That's all. It's just a bunch of bullshit. Now, he wanted to peg Orlando Anderson, but I think that the most salient point that the lady made in the entire special was when she asked Reggie flat out, what motive would Suge have to kill Biggie? Why did Suge Knight want to kill Biggie? And the problem is, if you don't understand or subscribe to the Murder Rap theory that Puffy had something to do with it, Suge's whole motivation is gone. Why, if Orlando Anderson killed Tupac, would Suge Knight want to kill Biggie? Okay, why in the world? Because wouldn't Suge Knight want to kill Orlando Anderson if he's the one that everybody said did it? Wouldn't he just kill Orlando Anderson? If it was going to be eye for an eye, that's exactly what you would think would happen. And he'd probably kill him after he testified for Suge. You know, if Suge was capable of making phone calls outside of the jail and orchestrating a hit on Biggie, you don't think he could have orchestrated a fucking hit on Orlando Anderson? I mean, really. If he's that powerful to pick up the phone and call and motivate LAPD guys and get everybody behind him that he allegedly got behind him to do a killing on Biggie, you don't think he could have saddled up on Orlando Anderson? Please.
Well, I have a theory as to why. That the hit was a retaliation hit, and why I think that Reggie Wright Jr. had something to do with it. The reason I believe this in my own line of thinking before even seeing Battle for Compton is if you set someone up, if we subscribe to the notion that Reggie Wright Jr. set up Suge Knight. Suge Knight was a target to be assassinated that night in Vegas. So let's say you plan to kill a friend of yours, a very close friend, a business partner, and you fail. What do you do at that point? Do you run? Because if you run, you look guilty. The only play that Reggie Wright Jr. allegedly would have in this hypothetical scenario would be to say, you know what, Suge, we'll find out who did it and we're going to pay him back. And hence why we saw a Biggie murder, because I believe from the very beginning that the people involved with the hit on Suge pointed their fingers right at the media opposition, and that's why we saw a retaliatory killing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you think about, if you want to give Suge Knight a reason for having motive to kill Biggie Smalls, the only way that works is either the Puffy theory or the Patton theory. Because if Patton's made the hit on Suge and Tupac, and they put out that hit, then suddenly Reggie is running around because Suge wanted to know who shot him. Reggie's running around making excuses, makes it a Puffy thing or an East Coast, West Coast thing. Then Suge Knight's going to want to get revenge for whoever it was that shot at him. And so if he thinks it was all East Coast driven or revenge driven, he would be after those people that would be responsible for it. So, whether or not Suge Knight had something to do with it, or whether or not Suge Knight didn't have anything to do with Big E's killing, and it was simply Reggie and the gang wanting to take a suggestion that Suge made and prove themselves worthy and go do it themselves or set the whole thing up just on Suge's suggestion. Either way, Suge's got to have a motive for doing what he did. He doesn't want to go to jail for murder. He doesn't want to go down for the rest of his life. So why would he be out to kill Biggie? So that's really why it makes it more of a who has stake to win and who has stake to lose there. And I think Shadowcat, you're right. I think East Coast, West Coast was a cover up. We talk about that Battle for Compton. So I think that the most relevant question out of that whole Fox interview was to Reggie, and of course he couldn't give the answer. What motive would Suge Knight have for killing Biggie? And I think Reggie said revenge. But revenge for what? How do you get revenge on somebody that didn't do anything to you? So it's just crazy. Mike Drake.
I had something to say. I watched the whole thing in full, and I noticed that they only attacked two theories, or they only analyzed two theories, and those two theories were Orlando Anderson was responsible for the death of Tupac Shakur, and the other theory that they put it against is the Suge Knight had it set up theory. Now, that, in my opinion, has been beaten to death. That dead horse has been beating multiple times. What is your opinion on them automatically going to the Suge did it theory and not addressing Battle for Compton? See, I know some inside information. I don't want to put it out there if you don't want it out there, but the people that did the special know your theory pretty well, correct?
Well, it's no question they saw Battle for Compton. You got to understand something about the Suge did it theory. I didn't come up with the Suge did it theory. That wasn't unique to R.J. Bond and Frank Alexander. We put it in Battle for Compton, but the first place that theory ever appeared was in Labyrinth, and it was Russell Poole's theory that Suge had Tupac killed and that the Tupac and Biggie cases were related because Suge Knight had Biggie killed after the thing with he wanted somebody to blame, so he went out and he had Biggie killed as a revenge to cover up the killing of Tupac Shakur. That wasn't my theory. Frank and I took that theory and we were able to substantiate that theory. And a lot of people associate the first assassination movie, especially uninformed, like, people like Anton Beatty and, people that don't read, I suppose, because they didn't read Labyrinth. That whole Suge did it theory was out there long before R.J. Bond showed up in 2007. That was 10 years later. R.J. Bond showed up. Vibe magazine had done a thing on it. There were a lot of people. The Suge did it theory. So I don't personally think that the Suge didn't do it, Suge couldn't have done it theory or explanation in the show was directed at me personally. Because that theory was out there for a long time. Russell Poole had that theory out there. So I don't take it personally that they did that. Now, why they didn't get into the patents and why they didn't get into the new theory, it's kind of beyond me. Lawyers have a lot to do with it because lawyers would rather be more comfortable with them going with a dead person having killed Tupac than a live person that's still at large having done that, or Reggie still at large doing that. Standards and practices and lawyers for television shows are very, very aggressive with what they'll allow you to put on TV and what they won't, because they're worried about the liability for slander. And so when you look at what could have been asked, I mean, easy to blame it on a dead guy. In fact, maybe that's part of the reason why a lot of these shows are going that route, is because their lawyers are telling them, hey, wouldn't it suck? Think about this, Jess. Think about it.
A dead man can't sue.
Yeah, but think about this. How bad would it suck if you had a whole television show put together and you had it all buttoned up and you had the patents and you had everything going in the one direction and it was good and you done your homework on that, and you have the friggin' lawyer tell you, no, you can't. You have to redo the show and you have to go with something that nobody can sue us over. Well, now you got the default. Okay, back to safe ground.
And that's the Suge did it theory.
The Suge did it theory and the Orlando Anderson theory.
I do want to make an observation. It's quite funny. When the police shot into the rounds, the marked rounds in the BMW in the Fox reenactment, when he shot specifically into the doors, it showed pretty much what happened to Tupac and Suge. But Murder Rap says that they just pulled up, they started blasting. When the train cop started blasting, everybody died. So I want to give a little bit of respect to you, because it's always been your first go-to that they opened fire on the approach of the car. People had laughed that off, and then here comes Fox, even trying to disprove certain theories involving Suge, yet validating you with their own trajectory.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was part 1 or part 2 that we did it in, but we even had a wireframe model of the car with the actual sticks, the trajectory sticks in it, to show where the shots had come from on it, how they all went.
I believe that was the first one.
It may have been the first one. Listen, I personally, there wasn't anything in Fox at all that we haven't covered in one of the 3 movies. We covered everything in everything that Fox had to say. The only thing that we didn't do was we didn't get into the 94 shooting, and I don't really know why the hell they got into the 94 shooting at all. Because as far as I'm concerned, there was 40% 94 shooting, 10% 96 shooting, and 40% or 50% Biggie. I mean, the whole Vegas shooting thing was 2 interviews. And one of them was Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd. We all know how that goes.
And it's like I said previously, if it was a show about Biggie, it would have been a good show. But I think they threw Tupac in just for the rating spike. I'm going to be completely honest with you on that. I see that for what it is. I did want to ask you your opinion because they did get into the 94 shooting. And by the way, Haitian Jack, you owe me an interview now. You said once this was done, I get mine. A lot of people think he's never spoken before, but he's actually quite active. But I guess what I want to say is, do you feel, RJ, that they were kind of letting the East Coast take shots at Tupac during the beginning of that special?
Yeah, I do. I think that there was they certainly didn't make Tupac out to be the hero and semi-god that he is on the West Coast. You know, they kind of dumbed him down to being a normal human being, which is fine by me. You know, I've done the early years, and I've done a lot of interviews with Man. A lot of people that have talked Keisha, his wife, talked about the '94 shooting. You know, and I have a completely different understanding about what happened and who was involved with the '94 shooting than a lot of people do, just based on the interviews with Man, based on the interviews with Keisha, based on a lot of information that's not out there. And the fact that Haitian Jack wasn't directly involved with it, I mean, you can have enemies. Doesn't mean that they're all out to kill you. The fact that Haitian Jack didn't have anything to do with it, he didn't give the order with it, makes perfect sense to me. Because the theory that's running around with the people that are closest to him was that Tupac owed some people money. It was all about money. He had owed a lot of people money. The story goes like this. Tupac was recording and was doing very well, and he was making money. Then when the rape charge happened against him, they were scheduled to do several performances. This is what Man said. They were scheduled to do several performances in other countries, overseas. And that's how the Outlaws and a lot of these cats get a lot of their money, because they're very popular overseas. They do big business out there. But for Tupac, they were getting ready to go on a European tour and make some money there. And the judge took away Tupac's and Man's passports. So they couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck. And there wasn't any tour dates booked because they booked them all over in Europe, and nobody was putting any tours together. And Tupac had already gotten used to a pretty comfortable lifestyle of having thousands of dollars on him because, you know, Tommy Boy was treating him well. He was making money from his other albums. He was doing all right. But according to Man, because there was no tours and no income, no revenue coming in, and no royalties really coming in, that apparently Tupac had to go and borrow money from some people while he was in New York. And we don't know a lot of the details about that, but we do know that these witnesses did say that Tupac had to borrow a lot of money, and that Tupac wasn't, let's just say he wasn't prompt in paying it back. This is the way the story goes. And so when he had the money and he didn't pay it back, according to Keisha, his wife, he was very paranoid when he came home. Apparently what he had done is he had gone to a recording session, and you may know more about this one. Before the Quad Studios, he went to a recording session, and he agreed. Yeah. What was that recording session?
That was, it was actually called The Heat at the time. Most people know it as Deadly Combination. He did that at Ron G's house, and Ron G told me that it was very suspicious because Tupac was getting page after page after page. And when Tupac actually picked up the phone and called him, one of the things he said was, well, I'm going to need X amount of money. My money's going to be there, right? I need my money.
Right. And that was what Man said. They needed money really bad. Tupac needed money, but they weren't making any money. So he borrowed the money. And the reason he went out and he did this first recording session was to get paid. He wanted to get money. The problem was, it doesn't appear like he was going to pay the people that he owed the money to with that money that he just made. He had it in his pocket, because when he said when he got home and Keisha was there in this interview with Keisha, she said that, you know, he told her to turn off all the lights, lock the door, don't answer the door, don't answer the phone, don't do anything, pretend like you're not home. And she said, well, if it's that dangerous, why don't you stay here with me? And he said, no, I got to go to this other place. I got to go make some more money, but just stay here. And don't answer the door and turn off all the lights. Now, that to me sounds like somebody who's worried about somebody following him down, because I think what happened was, and again, this is part of speculation, but I truly believe that somebody that paid him dropped the dime to the people that he owed the money to and said, hey, he's got money on him. So we know that Tupac, and I think it was like $5,000 that they paid him for doing the track. So Tupac had like $5,000 cash on him. And if the people that he owed money to
wasn't the one that paid him, but he had just done a session prior to that he had just gotten paid from.
Okay, yeah.
And then he had an argument with them. Initially he wanted $5,000 to go to the Quad Studios, but he was arguing with them for actual more money for $7,000.
Right. But at any point he had already been paid, and he was packing cash along with his jewelry and everything like that. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that if somebody dropped the dime to the people that he owed the money to, and they were watching him, they were following him. I mean, when you owe money to people like loan sharks or drug dealers or anybody else, if you owe money to them, I'm not saying you did, but if this is what we've heard, that if that was the case and he was rolling with some cash and he was owing money to some people, that those people would be waiting for him if they knew he was going to Quad Studios, or word on the street was that he was expected to be there. They would be there waiting for him to get there. And there's just too much information coming in from Man, coming in from Keisha, coming in from people that were there at that time to understand what happened before he got to Quad Studios, that if there's some dude sitting there with an army jacket there outside the door and the guy at the front desk sitting there, you know, he was walking into a trap. And I think a lot of people get it wrong that there was, you know, that they were out there to do anything other than shake him down for money or for jewelry. But when they held him up and did that, that's when all shit broke loose. But there's, in D981, I agree. You know, there is a lot of bullshit out there, and that's why I wish that we would get some of these interviews that we're sitting on for various reasons. I wish we'd just get them out because they're there. They're the information is all there, and it's from people like Man who have never really talked to anybody about this stuff.
Yeah, and it's a slight unfair advantage. You know, I've seen some of these interviews. I've been privy to certain screenings of some of this stuff and material. And RJ's absolutely right. This stuff does need to come out. I don't mean to interrupt, but I was told, since we're telling the Quad story, the situation with Stretch, which wasn't really addressed on the Fox special, is when Stretch saw the armed men, Stretch dropped. That Stretch dropped to the ground. And that was Tupac's problem with Stretch. I guess he expected, and even Majesty said this himself, when someone's got a gun to you, you know, Tupac expected extreme loyalty, and Stretch didn't show it. So it was between Tupac and the robbers at that point.
Yeah. But in wrapping up the Quad thing, I mean, you know, all the events that happened at the Quad Studios, according to Fox, and how it all went down and the shots and everything, you know, the question, you know, still hasn't really been asked why. I mean, you know, why was that? Why did those people hold the guns to them? What was the motive for that? Why did that happen? And nobody's really come up with any reason other than it was just like some random freak thing that a bunch of people. But the problem with that is that why just Tupac and his entourage? If that dude was standing out there and he was going to jack somebody, there were plenty of artists coming and going from that studio. They don't just stay up there all day. They're yelling down or they're looking down and that. There's people coming and going. So if somebody's going to get jacked, I mean, you know, what do you spin the wheel and Tupac was just a lucky guy? I mean, I don't believe that for a minute.
I lived in New York. I lived on Long Island for a few years in early high school years. And the city is a big place. There's a lot of people there, but those neighborhoods, and especially where Quad Studio is, it's a very tight-knit neighborhood, and trust me, word of mouth traveled faster back in the 90s than any two-way pager. So it's no coincidence, but it's very likely, like RJ said earlier, that Tupac was being followed and watched just by people on the street.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Tupac, and for the record, Tupac was pretty well liked in New York. There was a lot of people that really liked him in New York. He, you know, and they the Fox special got it wrong because they said that Tupac wasn't from New York. Tupac was born in New York. He was from New York. He was New York there the first 10 years of his life.
He was
until he left.
MC New York.
You know, yeah. So I mean, you know, they got that part wrong. But again, that's the problem with when you mislead people like that they don't understand it. You know. But I do think that, you know, as far as the 94 shooting goes, I think that the idea that he owed money, and of course that's not what real fans want to hear because everybody likes to think that their idols are, you know, kind of flawless and blameless, but let's just call it what it is. He's a human being. I mean, he did what he had to do to make a living. There's no shame in that. You know, he made his choice. Just like sometimes I get a bill, the water bill, and the water bill says, you know, I got to pay it in 30 days. Sometimes I may pay it in 10 days. Sometimes I may wait all 30 days to pay it. It's certainly your choice when you want to pay people money that you might owe them, but there are always going to be repercussions if you don't pay people what you owe them. And
there absolutely was some vocalness on the part of Tupac. I'm not saying that Tupac threw anybody under the bus, but he was a very public figure, and his co-defendants were running with a dangerous crowd, and he owed people money. So I think the Quad Studios event served several purposes, just like most street justice does.
Well, and again, I mean, it's interesting. Mike Scott, thank you for welcome to the show. Mike Scott said, "What about Dexter Isaacs? Did he confess to actually shooting Tupac at the quad?" I think it's weird that Biggie and Stretch said the same shit to Fat Five Freddy. I think Haitian Jack had him shook. We don't know that Haitian Jack wasn't who Tupac owed the money to. We don't know that. We don't know. I mean, they were at nightclubs together and stuff like that. It's very easy if you're at a nightclub to say, "Hey, listen, can you flip me a couple $1,000s? Can you flip me a couple grand until next Friday? Can you kick it down?"
I have on a very solid source that the Rolex that Tupac was wearing was bought by Haitian Jack, and we all know those aren't cheap.
Right. So so there's a lot going on there. But again, let's talk about DWP are a bunch of crooks. I agree with you, Yeezy. They definitely are. Department of Water and Power. Gino Moulton said, hey Gino, RJ, do it seem like Tupac was kind of bad with money and finances? Yeah, he was. He was bad with. He was bad. Atron Gregory would be happy to tell you about, Tupac didn't even have a checking account of his own or a savings account, didn't even know how to open one until he was 19 or 20 years old. And that's not unusual. Most people don't open until they get that old. But he didn't know the first thing about it. He wasn't used to having a lot of money. And when he suddenly had a lot of money, there was a problem with that. He always said, don't let his mom handle his money if he was going to make that. But, there was a reason that Pac was happy with that $5,000 a week that Suge would give him. And that's because that constant flow of money keeps you out of harm's way.
And people have to understand, too, that Pac was facing several legal cases, and that was part of the problem in New York, is he was spending a lot of money on legal cases and lawyers and attorneys, because Pac was fighting a bunch of numerous charges his whole life. So even though he was making money, a lot of that money was also going to attorneys, and it would explain to a great deal why he died with, what was it, RJ, $100,000 in the bank, $140,000?
Yeah, something like that. Well, and NGT for life, welcome to the show. If Pac owed money, why did Jack say what he said, and why did Jimmy say what he said? Well, the problem is that a lot of them have said a lot of different things. I mean, I can't put all the things that Haitian Jack has said into one piece of, it'd be fun to do. I just don't have the time to do it, is to gather up all the Haitian Jack stuff and put it all together in one timeline, kind of like we did with EDI, I don't mean, when we, put all that stuff out.
Oh, we're playing that again.
Oh yeah, because that's the best thing. I mean, we did that with a certain web blogger whose name I won't mention, that plays both sides of the fence and says one thing and does another, and says one thing and does another. And the best way to catch these people, and it is to put it all up on the instant replay and take a look at what's been said. Because you say one thing, you say another thing, say one thing, say another thing, that catches up with you. So they've said a lot of things, but I don't think personally the issue that Pac owed somebody money or that he was killed over money, I don't know that these guys would want to admit that, especially if you're the guy he owed money to. I don't think you'd want to be the guy to say, well, he owed me money, because that would give you motive. Why was Pac killed? Oh, he owed me money. Or why was Pac shot in 94? Oh, he owed me money.
And it makes you look like a piece of crap because of the status that Pac has reached.
And he's admitting to being the one to being culpable in a shooting if he says he owed me money. So of course they're not going to say he owed him money. I mean, that's why. I truly believe that.
Yes or no answer, RJ. Do you believe in the magic bully theory presented in the Fox special?
Well, no, I don't believe in the magic bullet theory at all. I still am trying to figure out what the hell they were saying. I mean, I know you said it was the magic bullet theory, but I watched it again. I'm like, I don't even think that they even understood what they were saying.
What I got, I believe they were inferring, was only one shot was fired in the elevator, which was Tupac pulling his weapon, and that shot ricocheted around, and the wounds on his head were simply being pistol whipped. I know he was pistol whipped, but they are basically, what I got from it, what they inferred, was one bullet did all the damage to everybody.
Okay. Hey, real quick too, Ryan Burns, welcome to the show. Let's not talk bad about AJ Benza. We like AJ Benza. AJ Benza is a friend of the show.
Oh, AJ Benza's from the neighborhood.
I don't believe that AJ Benza ever threw Tupac under the bus. I don't think that would even be possible.
I want to comment on this. AJ Benza is a straight shooter. He's a good dude. You can trust what AJ says, and you know what? The great thing about AJ is he don't play the PC game. He's going to tell it to you, and he's going to tell it to you straight. And I tell you what, AJ Benza is a good dude. and I've been a fan of AJ Benza for 20 years.
Yep. Johnny Blaze, welcome to the show. Wasn't it Tut that he owed the money to? Yeah, I think that's who they said. I think that was that he owed the money to. And that was pretty common knowledge. I think even Wayman Anderson said that.
I believe what he's saying is you can't rule out that he could have owed money to Haitian Jack earlier.
Oh, no, right. No, absolutely not. You never know. And Mike said, is it true that, hey, Mike, is it true Biggie tried to warn Pac about Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman? Yes. According to Man, yes, he absolutely did. That he was like, you shouldn't be tying up with those guys. You shouldn't be getting involved with those guys. Those guys are in, trouble.
And according to recently, before Lee mentioned AJ Benza said that other people tried to warn Tupac about those guys as well, because those guys had a pretty notorious reputation.
Yeah. Let's see here. How untouchable is Reggie? Mike Drake, where is Mackie Perez? Any updates? Well, all right. So David Mack is out of prison. He is living elsewhere. Rafael Perez has changed his name.
You might get an Uber with him.
Yeah, you might. He's currently, or last known, he was a limousine driver driving for the Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, who's an executive at Miramax Pictures. He's a driver for Harvey Weinstein's daughter. That's when TMZ caught up with them the last that I saw that. And how untouchable is Reggie? Reggie's clearly touchable because they indicted him. They indicted his ass, okay? But I call Reggie the Teflon Don because nothing ever seems to stick to him, okay? He's in control of a lot of things. I mean, the word I have is that when the ATF came in and busted Reggie Sr., raided his house for the federal indictment, that he told everybody that they were all mistaken, that this was part of an ongoing police investigation and that it didn't look like what it really was, that they had been tracking him for 3 years doing. But that was the first thing out of his mouth was, hey, this is a police investigation. So I tend to think that if they've used that line one time, they probably used that line 100 times, and maybe 99 times out of 100 they actually did. They actually, meant it. So, hang on a second.
But as I was saying, when it comes to Tupac and the Quad situation, even though we sat here and we discussed it as long as we did, I don't see how it was really relevant to that special, because if they were gonna, like Natasha Walker has said, that she feels that there's a connection between Roseman, Jimmy Henchman, and the Vegas shooting. Now, I would understand why they would go so in depth in the Quad studio situation if they were going to try to tie the death to the Vegas shooting. What it looks like to me is that they rushed a project. They might have had other plans for it, and it was just poorly produced. Can't hear you.
All right. All right. So let's see here. All right. So have we covered everything with Reggie and the Fox show? I mean, we'll see. He indicted himself by saying that when they asked about the indictment, said, "I fucked up."
Can you get her?
Well, yeah, I guess we could get Susan Constantine, but I don't think you need Susan Constantine to show when he was swallowing, when they asked him, why did Suge have a reason to kill Biggie, and he gulps.
Imagine that face analyzer, though.
He just stalls. Okay, I think Susan Constantine would just start laughing. So, hey, you know what? We could ask her to look at it, but
crowdsource the truth.
But Susan Constantine costs money, and although that would be a pretty sure bet, it would definitely be, there would be a cost involved with that. And I'm not really sure that we need to do that because, quite honestly, there wasn't a single person that truly believed he wasn't, completely fucked up at that point.
To answer Marcus Williams, Jmix, would you interview Ice-T? Of course. Ice-T is he's someone I grew up with. I love Ice-T. I'm not happy with what he presented, but I do understand that Ice-T wasn't in the editing room. Ice-T showed up, did his job, and he left. Whatever the show looks like when Ice-T is, watching it just like us, Ice-T has very little to do with the direction of the show.
Gino asked, do you all find it odd when Big Gene said that Diddy didn't care if Big had to die, didn't care if Pac had to die, didn't care if Suge went to jail, and it happened like that? I think that particular comment that Puffy made, and I'm no, Puffy apologist by a long shot, but I think that's one of those kind of comments that are one of the most misunderstood comments, because, when Gene said that, you have to understand Eugene Deal's beef with Puffy to begin with, and why things might be characterized a certain way. I'm not saying Eugene has lied about anything. I don't believe he has for a minute. I think he's a pretty straight shooter. But in terms of how he quoted Puffy in saying that, I think he said, he didn't care if Big had to die, didn't care if Puffy had to die, because something had to happen to make the changes. Things were de-escalating in that culture, in the rap industry. Violence was accelerating. It was with the wars and the hit 'em up and all that, things were escalating to a point where something big was going to have to happen. And I think that was really the turning point, was the two killings that turned that industry and kind of almost ended that era. But that era was spiraling out of control. There were murders in the 90s. There were murders, the likes of which we've never seen as far as the number of murders nationally. The crime was at an all-time high level. Drugs are at an all-time high level. I think that those two killings actually galvanized a particular era, and it brought everybody to a lot of sense to say, hey, wait a minute, stop for a minute. Stop this nonsense. Stop this violence. Stop this. Because it wasn't shortly after that you started to watch that escalation pattern start to go down. Okay? It just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and more public and more public. And then after that, it kind of started to go down. And I don't know if maybe that had to do with Suge going to prison. I don't know. But whatever it was, things just unraveled. Death Row Records unraveled. Everything unraveled. So when Puffy says that stuff, he didn't care if that had to happen, I'm not sure that he's saying he didn't care about the individuals. He just knew that whatever it took to make a change, it was going to have to happen. And at least, like I said, I'm no Puffy apologist, but I think there's a couple of different ways that you can interpret how he said that.
I wanted to address all about Asia and Daz Dillinger. Daz, apparently, he said that he did a whole segment for the Fox special, and they left it on the cutting room floor. So they were going to go with a certain narrative either way. I would be very interested in what Daz has to say, seeing as he might be watching this now. So once again, I want to implore Daz to come on the channel, and we'll show him unedited.
So anyway, Daz, come on the show. Let's talk. Let's chop it up. Let's find out. Let's get, if you felt you were treated unfairly, or if you treated, badly, or something was misunderstood or misconstrued in Battle for Compton, let's talk about it. Let's get it out there. We're going to ask some serious questions. So, just FYI.
But I won't edit what you say. We can do it live, buddy. I mean, you can say what you want to say. I actually want to hear what you have to say. But the questions will be real, but I implore you. Thank you, RJ, for that. What did you think about the news of them putting up the wrong picture, and the LAPD, or what was it, Los Angeles, kind of went after Fox show over?
Hey, I agree. Reggie Wright Jr. for mayor of Compton. I think that's a hell of a platform right there. I think that's right. Yes, thanks, Ryan. Okay, so Fox got in trouble. I don't know if everybody's catching the headlines these days. Fox getting in a lot of trouble because at the end of the day, they put up it's bad enough that they got all the information about the murders and everything else wrong. But when you're blaming a detective for being corrupt, and this should be a lesson to other people who have accused U.S. attorneys and everybody else of being corrupt without a single ounce of proof of it, when you go and you say that a public official, like a police officer, was hiding things in his desk, and his name is Steve Katz, you don't take Stephen Katz, who's the LA County Sheriff, head of robbery homicide, who's a captain with the LA Sheriff's Office, and put his picture up as the guy who was hiding evidence from a federal investigation, okay, a federal civil suit. You don't do that. And the LA County Sheriff's Department went mental over it, and they demanded publicly that that Fox issue a retraction. And Creative Media, who were the ones who did the show, they immediately issued an apology to Stephen Katz, who's the head of robbery homicide for the LA County Sheriff's Department. But, you know, that's a pretty big mistake to make. I mean, it just kind of shows you, to be personally honest, in my opinion, the whole show was put together recklessly. I don't think they had enough time. They were stuffing 5 gallons in a 10-gallon drum, or actually the other way around, 10 gallons in a 5-gallon drum, trying to cover a lot of ground, and I think they were sloppy about it. They didn't spend enough time preparing, actually writing the episode before they shot it. They got a bunch of people together. Hey, let's talk to this guy. Hey, let's talk to this guy. They approached me about an interview. Hey, let's talk to this guy. Hey, let's talk to them. You know, ultimately, they threw a bunch of shit together, and they didn't really care about what was accurate and what wasn't. And unfortunately, for the Tupac world and the Orlando Anderson world, people are kind of used to people not having good information. But the LA County Sheriff's Department aren't going to put up for a single minute of Fox or anyone else accusing them of malfeasance. The LA County Sheriff's Department didn't take it for 1 minute that Stephen Katz's name was there. And I think the only reason that they haven't reacted to the accusations that the LA Sheriff's Department killed Russell Poole is because it has no traction. There's, you know, maybe 5,000 people have seen it, maybe 10,000. A city of millions of people, 5,000 people watching it isn't that many people. So, you know, it's not even, I mean, it's not even hot dog night at Dodger Stadium. You know, it's just nobody. So they really don't care. I don't think that their silence in any way, shape, or form indicates that they're scared or that they're worried about it or that they're hiding something. I don't believe it for a minute. I think that if there was actually some traction and that story actually got picked up by any legitimate mainstream media, I think the sheriffs would cloud up and rain all over it, to be perfectly honest with you. So I think people need to be very, very careful when they go around accusing public officials of malfeasance when they have absolutely not one shred of proof, honestly. Sermon over.
Well, I wanted to let everybody know, give them a little sneak preview of something I've got coming down the pipes to you. There's been a lot of talk, and I wanted to separate me personally. You know, I'm fact-driven, I'm research-driven, I'm testimony-driven, and, you know, RJ said something a long time ago that resonated with me, and that was, enough with the talk, show the doc. So for you guys watching, I am going to put, for the first time ever, first time anybody is seeing this, I'm going to put Jake Robles' incident report online. I'm going to put Suge Knight's statement of the night of what happened with Jake Robles online for the first time for you guys. And I just want to show you that that's what separates people who just talk and other people who don't want to show full documents. We're going to put that story out for you so you guys know what happened better than anybody else. You've heard many versions of this story. If you want to know what really happened and read Suge Knight's own words on it, we're going to put that up for you because we believe in backing up what we talk about and showing the documents because we try to vet all legitimate sources and we want to give you guys the closest thing you can get to the truth to make up your own minds.
Right. And that is not said to be a counter to anybody else. That's not said to put anybody else down. That's just how we run our show. That's it. There's not, you know, everything gets taken away. And I know people talk when we do the show, we say things. Yeah, when we say things and we're talking about how we choose to do things, that's our personal choice. But people will take off and run to other camps and we'll tell other camps, oh, they said this and they said they were talking shit about you because they said this and they said that. No, we're in our own lane. This is how we choose to do things. Forget the talk, show the docs. One of the biggest problems of Greg Kading always has been a bunch of allegations. Tim Brennan says he talked to Michael, I won't say Doherty. What was his name? Orlando Anderson's buddy, Michael Doro.
Doro?
Michael Doro. Tim Brennan says that he talked to Michael Doro in prison, and Michael Doro admitted that Orlando Anderson told him that he was the shooter, and that Michael Doro said that Orlando Anderson was the shooter. Where's the proof of that? I'm Tim Brennan. You told me that? Oh, good. Amazing that all these years, he finally told me something that I've spent my entire career, trying to be the hero of, that story. But there's no proof of it. There's no document. There's no evidence of that conversation ever happening. Elvis visited me the other day and told me that he knew some things. There's no evidence of that conversation either. So to me, it's highly suspect when people just make up shit and they've got no proof of it. Greg Kading's got no proof of half the stuff that he says. And we've invited him many times. Show the documents. Show the documents. Show where you're basing this information of. I think it's very telling that Greg Kading is making a television show that actually is fiction based, because that way you don't have to show anything and nobody can hold you to it, because you're admitting up front it's all bullshit. Okay, that's what he's doing. And to me, that's just an admission that you don't have anything. Because why couldn't you do like a Joe Kenda, the detective, the homicide hunter? Why couldn't you approach a show like that where you're actually going through the documents, you're actually looking at the evidence, you're actually working the case? Why does it have to be fictionalized? Okay, what part of the story do you need to make up, Greg? Okay, what parts of the story are you making up versus what's real? If you don't show us the documents and show us what's real, we don't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. What bullshit you're making up? Doesn't that make some sense? That's why I say forget the talk, show the docs. Let's get some documents out there. What's fucked up is why nowhere ever talks about the first part of the crime scene where Pac and Suge actually shot before driving off and trying to get away. Well, the reason is because the Vegas police trampled that crime scene. They didn't seal it off when the shooting happened. They by the time Vegas police got involved, they had already turned around, sped off, all the cars had dispersed. There was a bunch of shell casings sitting in the middle of Koval. That was actually the primary crime scene. But they had to attend to the people first. But, there were bike cops that were there, but nobody bothered to seal off the crime scene. I think Kathy Scott, if anything, she did right. She actually documented that very well, that the Vegas police were terrible about securing that primary crime scene because cars were running over bullet casings and smashing them so that they were scarred up. It's hard to get good ballistics if your gun shells are not pristine, if your gun casings are not pristine. All it takes is one car to run over a bullet casing and now it's scratched up. So you're never going to be able to make a perfect identification on that. And again, let's say Tim Brennan is right. Let's say he got the magic gun out of 3,000 guns. He got the magic Glock and he took it to the ATF and they tested the ballistics on it, and the ballistics in the preliminary report came back that they matched. Well, see, that's the problem. There are 3 phases to a ballistics test. One is the initial, we think it is, because it matches something in the computer and something matches. And then the second one is a forensic analysis by an investigator who looks at those and makes those. And then the third is what we call a peer review. And that means that another investigator has to check the other investigator's work and the ballistics there, and they have to agree that those ballistics match. So you have 3 phases you have to go through before they're double darn sure that it was the bullet. So when Tim Brennan got the report that they did, and then suddenly it wasn't, and Vegas said it wasn't, that's probably because the other 2 tests hadn't been done yet, and they were waiting on the peer review results. But again, without any documentation, and Tim Brennan says that the ATF notified him that it was the bullet, what, was just a phone call? How did they notify you? Was there a document? Was there a fax? Was there something in writing that they said that they had it? Because anything's up for speculation at that point. Make sense?
Final thoughts on maybe the Fox special. I want to let everybody, and maybe another question if you'd like. I want everybody to know that we're going to be doing our live streams at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesdays now. So the next one will be next Tuesday. We'll be coming to you live. And sorry guys, this one was impromptu because I didn't specify on last Sunday that we weren't going to be going live this Tuesday again. So if you would, RJ, this is your platform. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, checking out. Please go ahead and like, Share your friends. Share it on social media. We archive these on the backup channel. We take out some bits that are just for you guys, but we put them up, and we hope to see you guys every Tuesday.
Daz, you're welcome to come on the show anytime you want to. I don't think that was the real Danny Boy, but if Danny Boy's on the show, you're welcome to come to the show. Let's chop it up. Let's talk about things that matter. I think that's really what it comes down to. Let's talk about things that matter. The Fox special was a bunch of bullshit, and you know, and I hope that the A&E program isn't, and I'm looking forward to hoping that they learn something from that Fox show and may make some changes while they still have time. So that's it. You guys had awesome questions today. Huge responses. Thank you guys. Please keep the conversation up. Talk to as many people as you can about this. This should be the show you guys come to once a week with the news on the Tupac world, the Biggie world. Anything new that comes up, this is where we're going to be talking about it. This is where you want to go to pick up that news, to pick up all that information and get our take in the wood. You know, I hate to say the no spin zone because that's already been taken, but you know, this is the no bullshit zone. And hopefully we can, get down to the bottom of the things that are going on. And like Martin Luther King said, you know, we all begin to die the day that we stop talking about things that matter. So let's do that, and let's keep it focused. And everybody have a great night. We'll see you next week.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
What up, WHOSHOTUP?